I have a real problem as a public speaker because whenever I mention my family, I start to choke up, so I have to move on quickly from that. But thank you very much. And my daughters in the next generation are one of the reasons that I see this election campaign is so important. We know from the science that we have maybe 10 to 12 years to sort out this climate emergency. And to get there in 10 to 12 years, we need to start right now. It's a very urgent emergency. And this election that's coming up is critical on whether we're going to be able to get a federal government in place to take the measures that are necessary, and we'll be speaking about those tonight, to address the climate emergency in a serious way. Some of you know that I was a federal Liberal once, and I volunteered for them for 34 years, but one of the reasons I left is that the federal Liberals are just not delivering in the way we need to deliver on climate action. It's a critical priority, and there were too many broken promises, so I left. I went to Elizabeth and said, I'd love to join your party. I'm happy to knock on doors. I'll recruit a candidate for you. And one thing led to another, and here we are together tonight, which I'm really thrilled about. But I think the climate emergency has changed the game, and I'm hearing that on the doorsteps. We've been knocking on doors since December. Many of the people in the back of the room have been knocking on doors through the heat and through the snow, and we're hearing more and more people saying, we must take action now. And it's very encouraging on the doorsteps. I can tell you it's very encouraging. The other thing, though, is I've worked in government for 28 years in different capacities at the Department of Justice and the Privy Council office in Ottawa. I've worked here at the Ministry of Attorney General as well for 12 years. And I know how hard it is for government to take action. 10 to 12 years is a very short time in government years, right? And so that means not only do we have to start now, but we need the kind of leadership that will drive deep transformational change in how our economy works, how our social justice system works, how our government works. It's very hard to do, and it requires a special kind of leadership. And that's why I'm really thrilled to be here with Elizabeth. Elizabeth is that special kind of leader, a very different kind of leader. She's been committed to this kind of climate action since she was a teenager. And I know that Elizabeth will deliver on these kinds of promises that we're making tonight. In urgent climate action, if you go to Mission Possible, we'll talk a little bit more about that tonight, the 20-point plan on how to hold global climate warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above industrial levels. That requires deep change, as I mentioned earlier, and we have a plan which we'll talk about tonight. And we also need to look at social justice. We can't leave people behind while we're implementing these changes. So it's not just about environmental policy, it's about deep change in our social policy, how we treat people, how we address growing inequality in our country. So these are other issues that we'll touch on tonight as well. So we have an environmental agenda, a social justice agenda, and a government transformation agenda that's really critical to meeting the climate crisis, and they all fit together. So for people who say the Green Party is only about one issue, the environment, that's just not right. You need a whole integrated approach to take the actions we need to address the climate emergency.